Welcome to 27 Topics. Our special guest today is Father John Boeglin, pastor at Holy Family Parish. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. It's good to be here today.
This is the time of the year that you really enjoy and have a great time with. And so we would like to, glad to have you here to talk about St. Nicholas and Christmas traditions.
Okay.
And
when you first asked me, I said, I don't know if I want to do it or not. But they said, well, you know enough to do a TV program. So here I am, folks, today to talk a little bit about Christmas and especially the traditions of St. Nick. The St. Nick traditions probably predate St. Nick many centuries before. In many of our cultures, even before biblical times, they had feasts around the winter solstice. And the winter solstice, I'm speaking about the shortest day of the year, the beginning, the new days. And we celebrate that, of course, on our regular calendar on the 21st of December. And so there have been always feasts, and there's always been kind of a gift giving, and also that sign of new hope for the coming year. And you have to remember that the present calendar we use today is not the calendar that was used in ancient times. Probably the most famous calendar, and that was the calendar in the time of Jesus, was called the Julian calendar. And that date was December 21st. And around that time, a lot of people in the ancient cultures developed their festivals and so forth. And the Romans honored the sun god, and of course in the ancient cultures had many gods. And so as we start the biblical times and we look in the Bible, especially we start reading Isaiah, and of course we in our Christian churches during the Advent season read a lot from Isaiah, and he talks about a new light to come into the world, wonderful counselor and Prince of Peace. And of course John the Baptist says the light of the world's come. He's pointing to that light. And of course for us we call ourselves Christians, naturally that light is Jesus, the light of the world. And after Jesus was born and people celebrated, and after he left us and redeemed us, Christmas wasn't really celebrated. In fact, it was considered to be a pagan tradition to celebrate Christmas. Of course, for us as Christians, we also know that the greatest act is not Jesus' birth. We know it's a tremendous mystery and love for us, but his greatest gift is dying on the cross. And so the early Christians didn't celebrate Christmas, and it was kind of frowned upon to have Christmas celebrations. And of course, in the first 300 years of the church, from Peter and Paul's time almost to 313 AD, we had the Edict of Milan, and it was for those first 300 years, it was illegal to be a Christian, to practice Christianity. But because of that, Christianity grew leaps and bounds under the Roman Empire. What happened then as Edict of Milan, 313 AD, then people were free to practice Christianity. But Constantine mandated everybody become Christian. And because of that religious freedom that was given to the people, but also the mandate to be Christian, then eventually came the celebration of Christmas. Also, during that early time in the early church, there was a great debate whether Jesus was also human and divine. And so therefore they debated. They knew that he was divine, but how human is this baby? Is he an angel that's taken on human form? And once you study and understand that Christian history, and people wanted to say that Jesus was truly human, therefore the idea of celebrating Christmas, this whole idea of becoming in the flesh, took predominance then in Christian tradition. And Christian tradition could practice openly now. Now let's kind of put St. Nicholas together to this whole idea. St. Nicholas was born in around, my notes here, I have to look at my notes, I think it was...
in the 3rd century.
Yeah, he was 280 AD. And this was before this religious freedom came about. But he was a man who came from a rich family, lost his parents early in life, and he practiced his faith, and he became a priest, and he became a bishop, and he became known for his acts of charity. So if you look at the time of his birth and now as he becomes an older man and you look at the religious freedom, you see how things start merging together, various traditions. You know, traditions repeat themselves. And as I said, then when Constantine mandated that everybody practice Christianity, he mandated that Christmas be celebrated on December 25th under the Julian calendar. Now, to make it a little bit more complicated, the Eastern Christians always considered Christmas the Feast of the Epiphany. That was Christmas in the first 300 years of the church, because it was the Magi bringing gifts to Jesus. And so you understand the gift giving. And when you see then when Constantine changed the date from Epiphany, now he's calling another date Christmas, and you see St. Nicholas all happening at the same time, all these traditions start merging together, and so they take a different face and a different name. And St. Nicholas is sort of he represents Christ. He represents giving. He literally, you might say, gave the shirt off of his body for other people so that they could, especially the poor. And of course, what happens is when you have a man who's outstanding in witness, many legends develop around St. Nicholas. And of course, legends and stories don't necessarily mean that they're true, but the legend or story teach a truth. And of course, if you read many of the books, and I was researching again on St. Nicholas, you know, there was a story that he rescued some children that were put to death. He brought them back to life. We're sure that he didn't have that power, but anyway, that was associated with him. Also, I think the most famous story that we all know is that there was a man who had 3 daughters. He was very poor, and of course, in those days, they were expected to give a dowry. That means for their weddings, and so therefore, they would have to sell their bodies, being prostitutes, and of course, in order that they wouldn't have to be. Another story is that one night he threw gold down a chimney or through a window or something for these women so that they would not have to sell their bodies, and so that they could remain good Christian people. So, and there's other stories. You know, he came from Patara, which is on the coast of Turkey. It still exists today. The town has changed its name. And of course, it was also, being a harbor town, he also became famous with the sailors. One story tells us that he left the town of Patara and went to the Holy Land to seek where Christ lived and died and so forth. And that he was on a trip with the sailors, and as he was, there was a bad storm at sea, and he prayed and he calmed the weather and so forth, so forth, so forth. You have all these legends and stories, okay? And I think the point is the whole idea of giving for oneself. You know, when Jesus said he came to lay down his life, you know, the greatest love is lay down one's life for another. St. Nicholas symbolized that for the early people. And he put it to flesh, and he was just another person in history. And as Christianity began to grow, so did St. Nicholas festivals. And as I said, you know, the early pagan feast of the sun, then Constantine used that feast and he Christianized it. A lot of pagan things and traditions, you know, as I said, that predate Christ and even predate the Old Testament scriptures, then take on a Christian meaning, because now this feast of the light, say the light of the unconquered sun, becomes replaced now with Christ as light of the world, but also St. Nicholas. And now we see Christmas being celebrated. We see St. Nicholas, whose feast day is also early December. So a lot of these traditions merge. And you have to remember, too, in these ancient cultures, you know, people didn't know how to read or write until the 14th and 15th century. And with all that, people didn't know truth. They just knew the stories. And so when you do oral traditions, let's face it, you tell your neighbor a story, and your next neighbor shares the same story, it changes somewhat. And so what happens throughout traditions, there's a lot of stories that are not true, but the point of the story is about giving, laying down one's life, and helping the poor. And that's one thing that St. Nicholas symbolized for the people. And so it was a time of gift giving. Also, it was tied with the birth of Christ, who gave his life for us. But naturally, like everything good thing in history, you know, things change, and sometimes they get out of hand. And sometimes these parties became probably drunken brawls, St. Nicholas Fest, adults would get together and so forth. And so therefore, there always had to be, what's the real tradition about St. Nicholas? What's it really about? And it's for all of us in life, sometimes that happens. Let me give you an example. I'm sure a tradition that since I've been around in America is Super Bowl, We've had Super Bowl for many years, but now it's a tradition, the commercials, all the business is tied around it. In a certain sense, that's kind of what happens sometimes with legends, and something great happens in history. You commercialize it. And I'm sure in the Middle Ages it was commercialized, but it also gave the people a time to celebrate. Remember, you don't have TV, you don't have radio, and the winter months are long, and so therefore you always look for something to celebrate. I think having the opportunity to live in Europe for several years, I've seen that the European calendar is based upon these old festival days. In America, we base our calendar dates around a 12-month calendar, but in Europe they talk about St. Nicholas Fest, they talk about Feast of Pentecost, they talk about all these Christian feasts, so they mold their lives around these feasts. In fact, they're national holidays. There are 30 holidays in Germany, paid holidays, believe it or not, and half are based around Christian things that happen throughout history. So therefore, traditions do develop. And so St. Nicholas became a very popular legend, and of course, as we look at Northern Europe and as Germany develops, and of course Germany doesn't become really a country until 1800s, but the various provinces that develop, and all over Europe you see whoever is Catholic and Christian, this came synonymous with Christmas, and it was a time also for children. One of the great things while I lived in Innsbruck studying theology there is that on the eve of St. Nick, the children come out with their little lanterns, and it's real lanterns, and they go around the big tree in the center of town. And there's another guy that's with St. Nicholas, and in Austria they call him Grumpus. And of course, in different cultures they call him different names. And it was preparation for Christmas, and so on that night, St. Nick brings kids candy or coal or a stick. And it was kind of a warning to them that they haven't been good, prepare for the coming of Christ at Christmas, which is a few weeks later. And those traditions are very much alive in Europe. And some of those traditions are here. Especially the Feast of St. Nicholas was brought over by the Germans. But those old ancient traditions are still, I shouldn't say really ancient traditions, but over 1,000 years, those traditions are still very much alive in Europe. St. Nicholas eventually, as I told you earlier, became famous with sailors, and the sailors moved his body from Myra, where he was eventually buried in Turkey, and now it's in Italy, in the boot of Italy. And of course, it was always a tradition, if you had some relic of a saint, their place was considered holy. So there's a lot with St. Nicholas and traditions, and we can read all kinds of stories about it. But it's the truth of giving, the truth of love, giving one's life for another person, and of course the gift giving. When we go through history, and we go through history pretty quickly, especially European history, one of the things that Martin Luther, when the Reformation came about, said that we were doing saint worship. And he was probably right. By that time, things had gotten out of hand, and what happened was sometimes St. Nicholas festivals became more important than the celebration of Christmas. And he says, well, wait a minute, St. Nicholas models Christ for us, but the season is about Christ being born and his love. And so many of where the Reformation took place, especially in Northern Europe, but also a place that I go visit a lot is Strasbourg, France, which is right across from the Black Forest, which is also close to Switzerland, where a lot of the Reformation also took place. They said we should no longer call these St. Nicholas festivals, but Christkindl festivals. And Christ comes where Christ, Kindle means little child. And so today, from Reformation times on, it became from St. Nicholas Fest to Christkindl Fest. It means the Christ child brings the gifts. And today, in many of the German-speaking parts of the world, is the Christ child who brings the gifts at Christmas. They still celebrate St. Nicholas, who prepares us for the spirit of Christmas, of gift-giving, but they never see the Christ child. The children usually leave the room. They shut the doors where the tree is at. Many of the German homes, they still have live Christmas trees, and they light real candles. Of course, they put the tree up the day before, because otherwise you do it like we do in America, they'd burn down the house. The tree would be so dry. So, and I'm participated in several of those, and I still have tremendous memories of that. But that was part of the Reformation. It was probably a good idea, but St. Nicholas still very much alive at those festivals. But we see it in the proper order. Then we see St. Nicholas festivals coming to America. But the first Americans who came here, the Puritans thought again that Christmas was a pagan feast and that we should not do it. And so therefore it was not properly accepted. The other thing was when the Germans came over, the early Germans. And this is an interesting fact that I found out. I always wondered, where did Kris Kringle come from? Kris Kringle, And we understand if you ever go to Germany, people speak different dialects. And the Americans thought what they were saying was Kris Kringle, which the Germans were supposed to say Christkindl, means Christ's little child. And so we as Americans have taken over as another name for St. Nicholas is Christkindl, which means supposed to be the Christ child. So again, through different cultures and different languages and dialects, the words have changed. The interesting thing is Christmas was not a federal holiday when America started. In 1776, the first state to make Christmas a federal holiday, if I remember my notes, is from the state of Alabama, and that was first in 1836, so just imagine. And it did not become a federal holiday by Congress till 1870. Think about that, 1870. We almost had 100 years of history before Christmas became a federal holiday, a holiday that we all look forward and to celebrate. And it's kind of unreal to think about that. But of course, we as Americans, we have taken over different cultures. The Sinterklaas is the Dutch name of St. Nicholas, and I'm sure from those words and the sounding of those words, that's where we probably got Santa Claus. But again, it's still the same idea of St. Nicholas. It's the idea of giving for others, giving his life, and so therefore we have that tremendous tradition. And so Santa Claus has become our St. Nicholas for many of us. But of course, for the true Germans, St. Nicholas and Christkindl, rather, the Christ giver, still remains the true person who gives the gifts at Christmas. And all these other traditions that we have with Santa Claus have come through famous writers. One famous writer was Thomas Knies, or Nass, we would say in English. He was a Bavarian, and he drew the first St. Nicholas in America, and that was around 1860. And in 1863 and 65, when we were having the war in America, Abraham Lincoln asked Thomas Nash, or Knies, to do a picture of St. Nicholas supporting the Union troops. And that was taken great offense by the Confederate, because it was like putting Santa Claus on the one side as against the other. And wait a minute, So there was a lot of politics dealing with that. And of course, then famous writers made Santa Claus very famous for us.
Father, I think we better take a break here.
Okay.
And we'll be right back.
Okay, thank you.
If you or someone you know has a talent to showcase or an event to promote on 27 Topics, please contact this station.
Welcome back. We're here with our special guest, Father John Boeglin, and we're talking about St. Nicholas and traditions. Father?
Okay, where we left off, there was one more point I'd like to make that it kind of amazed me. You know, I go to a lot of antique stores. How many fall in love with that Coke with Santa Claus? That made Santa Claus famous for America. And then came Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer and all that. But one interesting fact is we were filming this in December. I was just reading, we just remember Pearl Harbor. It just happened, the anniversary. I think it's the 60th year for the anniversary this year. That the Coca-Cola Company made a promise that everyone who served in the armed forces after the bombing of Pearl Harbor, that all of them could buy a Coke for 5 cents with Santa Claus on the bottle. And so that's how Coke markets Santa Claus in our country. And I thought that was an interesting fact because when you go to I enjoy these old trays too of Coke with Santa Claus on it. So I think it's a very interesting fact. But we know how Santa Claus has been marketed now today in our country. But again, remember, I'm talking about St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas, again, he symbolizes for us the importance of gift giving, and that we should not hoard up our wealth for ourselves, but that we need to think for the poor and think for others. And so, therefore, I think St. Nicholas still has a tremendous meaning for us today in our lives.
You have some St. Nicholas here, and we have a picture back here.
Yes. I like to, people know that I love Christmas, of course, and this is one of my St. Nicholases that's been given to me. It's very pretty. These different colors, and then I have another one I'm going to show you. Again, those of you who like to collect various art, a lot of people give me gifts, like when I officiated a wedding. If they know I love Christmas, and if they know about a Christmas store, they'll find me another St. Nicholas. So I didn't realize until I did this program that I had so many stored away. I don't get them out every year. It's too much. And then the last one I put on front of my TV, and this is the St. Nicholas I admire the most. Because of the little star, the beautiful little star. And I think the point is that St. Nicholas mirrored Christ and what he did. And I think that when he holds the star, it reminds me that I have the same job as a Christian to mirror Christ in all that I do. And so that's what St. Nicholas, that's what made him so famous. And still, I think the story today of St. Nicholas that's so important for all of us. And finally, between Paul and myself, there is a picture right here that my staff gave to me. And this was painted by a man named Edward Hayes. And if we see the robe that he's wearing, there are various elements in the robe of celebrating St. Nicholas. And one of the things is, I'll point to it right here, is St. Lucy, right there. And then you see the prophet Isaiah, and you see John the Baptist right here. Right above is Mary. And of course, on December 8th, we as Catholic Christians celebrate the Feast of Immaculate Conception, Mary being that special mother of God. And of course, on the other side of his robe, over here, you see the three magi. And then you see the bag that he's holding. Again, trying to bring joy to all kinds of other people. You see various legends, and you see the Middle Ages, the puppets and so forth, symbolize the gift giving. The Christmas tree, which was made famous by Martin Luther himself, it represents the Garden of Eden, and the red balls represent the forbidden fruit, but now the new fruit that's represented by Christ. And that Christmas is a time of joy at the top. You see the minstrels playing, and that we're preparing for Christmas. And in the Catholic faith, we have the Advent wreath, which you see the 4 candles over there. And of course, the third week symbolizes Rejoice Sunday. And then another thing that's on here says, Adeste Fidelis, O come all ye faithful, come to Bethlehem. So I'm very proud of this picture. I have it hanging over my fireplace year-round, and it helps me to remind me of this beautiful season of Christmas and how St. Nick reminds us, all of us, that we are to give our lives for others and share what we have so others may have just the basic necessities of life.
And I think, Father, you have a closing prayer. Yes,
the man who painted this picture wrote a book of prayers, and and there's a prayer of St. Nicholas, and I would like to share that prayer. And of course, as we all get older, I need reading glasses to read. And so I'd like to share this, and this is my prayer for you and for this feast of December as we prepare for the great birth of Christ. St. Nicholas, holy patron of children, Bishop of the East, we invite you to come among us and to grant us your holy blessing. Help us in this busy, busy season not to miss the miracle of the coming of Emmanuel, the days of preparation as well as on the feast itself. Help us not to be blind to the gifts of getting ready. Protect us from insincerity. May every greeting we send be signed with love and friendship and prayer. May our greetings so written be fun to open and treasures to keep. Kind St. Nicholas, protect us from shoppers' fatigue. Show us how to take light in the marketplace, now transformed in beauty, lights, and music. Save us all from anxiety over what to give, so that we may concentrate on how to give. Stand by the stepladder as we decorate our homes and trees and lives. May our decorations not be mute, but rather singing cymbals, sacred signs of the evergreen coming of the Lord of life. Help us to remember that mistletoe, holly, and all other ornaments of the season were sacred signs to ancient believers. But most of all, jolly saint of toys and sweets, help us stay youthful, humorous, playful, and dream-filled as we prepare together for the coming of Christ with Advent longing. St. Nicholas, pray for us. Amen. So I'd like to take this opportunity on behalf of myself, and I thank Paul for inviting me here today, that we hope that you will find some place of worship for this Christmas season, and that you'll open your hearts and minds so that Christ be the center of your life. I especially invite you to my parish at Holy Family. We have Christmas services, first of all, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Christmas Eve, and it's broadcast live by Paul, WBDC. We appreciate that. And you can listen to us and be part of our service. Also, we have another service at 11 o'clock at night and also at 9 o'clock on Christmas Day. But wherever you may be, we hope that you'll find some church to find a home, and that you will have the best of the holidays, and that your holidays will be blessed and be made holy. And may God bless you during this holy season. Thank you.
Thank you, Father, for being our guest, and Merry Christmas to you.
Thank you. God bless you too.